was in the middle of shaving my head bald, doing it to show my support for my daughter's battle with cancer, when my boyfriend, Ethan, texted me, telling me not to show up to his cousin's wedding looking like a bald freak and to get myself a decent wig. The women at the salon, however, came to my side, helping me look stunning without a wig. This was all before the wedding. Afterward, though, his texts turned downright nasty and hurtful. When I forwarded those texts to his mom, who had survived cancer herself, I never imagined he would lash out by filing false CPS reports and try to take my daughter away. I was shaving my head for my daughter. She had been feeling so lonely without her hair, so I decided to surprise her by doing something special. The stylist was just starting to cut large chunks out when my boyfriend Ethan sent me a text. My cousin's wedding is next week, and you're my +1. You better not show up looking like some bald freak. You're lucky I'm not breaking up with you over this. Get a decent wig, he wrote. I was stunned, staring at my phone. Before I knew it, tears started streaming down my face. Sophia, the stylist, saw my expression and immediately paused the clippers. She gently asked me what was wrong. I couldn't speak. I just turned the phone towards her. Her expression shifted from concern to absolute fury. She raised her voice, "Girls, we have a situation." Every woman in the salon turned their heads toward us. The lady getting highlights even pulled the foils out of her hair so she could lean in. Within seconds, I was surrounded. An older woman, after hearing the whole story, said, "Wait. What's going on?" Sophia spoke up. "Listen, gorgeous," she said to me, "text him back. Just tell him you'll look beautiful at the wedding, nothing more. Trust me, I've got an idea that will slay." Everyone watched as I typed, my fingers shaking. "Don't worry, I'll look beautiful at the wedding." His reply came instantly. "Good. Make sure the wig looks natural. Don't embarrass me." The silence in the room was deafening, but it didn't last long. Then, all at once, the women started talking. "He thinks you're getting a wig? Oh, he has no idea what's coming." "This is gonna be beautiful," said the woman getting extensions. "My best friend's a makeup artist. She'll clear her whole day for you." "My sister's an event photographer. She'll be there as a guest with her camera," the nail tech added. The college girl getting bangs was already on her phone. "My mom owns that jewelry boutique on 5th. You're getting the works." Sophia kept shaving my head, never losing her focus. "You're so strong, gorgeous. That piece of trash is going to get it," she kept saying. Another stylist came over with oils. "This will make your skin glow." I could feel myself starting to tear up. I was honestly in awe of how all these women came together for me. It was like a sisterhood. From the back, the woman getting a Brazilian yelled, "Someone better record his face when he realizes you're not wearing a wig." I couldn't help but laugh. As more hair fell away, I started to feel genuinely beautiful, all because of these women. When I checked myself out in the mirror after getting up from the chair, I looked at myself and said, "I look hot as hell." They all cheered for me, hyping me up. And when I went to pay, they told me it was all on the house. Even better, they asked if I wanted to stay and chat. Within minutes, the women were teaching me how to carry myself with confidence. One of the stylists, a cancer survivor, even showed me how to apply makeup that would accentuate my features, even without hair. "Cheekbones, honey. You've got amazing cheekbones," she kept saying. By the time I left, we had exchanged numbers, formed a group chat, and started making plans like we were pulling off some sort of heist. Morning makeup. Borrowed pearls. A gorgeous blue dress I couldn't afford, but one of the girls let me borrow. When I left, Sophia had tears in her eyes. "He expects a wig. But he's getting a warrior mama instead." I didn't see Ethan until the wedding, where I focused on spending time with my daughter, who told me I looked beautiful. But when the wedding finally came, Ethan was already standing in the corner, and when he saw me, his eyes went wide. I could see him tense up. He wouldn't even look at me. When I walked over to him, he wouldn't hug or kiss me. He just acted like I was a stranger. It should have upset me. But the women at the salon had hyped me up so much that I couldn't let his childish behavior affect how I felt. I stood there, feeling beautiful, despite him. And what was even better were the things people said to me at the wedding. One of the bridesmaids' moms came up to me. "Oh, sweetheart, I heard about your daughter. You both are warriors." The bride pulled me aside and said, "I heard what you're doing for your little girl. That's real beauty. You both are amazing." She told me how strong and beautiful I looked. Every person who spoke to Ethan asked about my daughter. "How's her treatment going? You must be so proud of your girlfriend's strength. You're lucky to have someone so brave." Ethan was so mad that everyone was complimenting me that he actually claimed he had food poisoning. I stayed, though, dancing with strangers who soon became my friends. But later that night, my phone started blowing up with texts and voice notes. "What in the world was that? You completely humiliated me. You look awful. Ugly. Get a wig tomorrow, or this relationship is over." I'm not kidding. The messages just kept pouring in, each one colder and more cruel than the last. But I didn't respond. Not a single word. Instead, I took screenshots of everything he'd sent. Then, I opened the chat with his mom and forwarded all of them. She had battled cancer herself, and I knew the moment she saw those texts, Ethan would be done for. The sound of a notification pinged on my phone, and within minutes, Isabella was calling me. I let it go to voicemail, then she called again. And again. By the time she called for the 4th time, I knew I had to answer. Her voice trembled with rage. She told me she was coming over first thing in the morning and we needed to talk. I tried to tell her it wasn't necessary, but the call ended before I could say much. That night, I barely slept. Chloe woke up twice with nightmares. I held her close, brushing her bald head with my hand, whispering that everything would be okay. By the time morning arrived, I felt exhausted but anxious. The doorbell rang precisely at 7 a.m. Isabella was standing there, looking drained and pale, holding a manila folder. I quickly settled Chloe in front of the TV with some cereal and her favorite cartoons before leading Isabella to the kitchen. She laid out printed screenshots on the table, every single message Ethan had sent. But that wasn't all. She had also printed out his social media posts from the last 12 hours. My stomach sank as I read them. He had posted pictures from the wedding, claiming I had manipulated him and ruined his cousin's day just to grab attention. One post even accused me of being mentally unstable and using Chloe's cancer for sympathy. Another called me an unfit mother who cared more about creating scenes than taking care of my sick child. My hands trembled as I read through each painful lie. The comments were even more hurtful. His friends jumped in, calling me names I couldn't even comprehend. Some of them even suggested he should fight for custody of Chloe, even though she wasn't his daughter. Isabella's voice snapped me out of my spiral. She declared, I'm cutting him off completely. No more money. No more support. He's out of my will, effective immediately. She apologized repeatedly, saying she had failed as a mother to raise such a cruel son. She promised to stand by me if I ever needed her testimony. After she left, I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the screenshots. Chloe wandered in, asking why I looked so sad. I forced a smile and suggested we make pancakes together. As we mixed the batter, she told me about her dreams, and I focused on her sweet voice instead of the heavy feeling in my chest. My phone started buzzing nonstop. The salon group chat was on fire. Someone had captured Ethan's posts before he could delete them. The women were furious. Sophia texted that she was calling her lawyer cousin right away. In less than an hour, Amelia Turner called me. Sophia's cousin specialized in harassment cases and offered me a free consultation. She went over Ohio's harassment laws and advised me to start documenting everything. She explained we could potentially build a solid case for a cease and desist, and even pursue defamation charges. The next few days passed in a blur. I tried to keep things normal for Chloe, sticking to her treatments and keeping her routine steady. But Ethan's attacks only got worse. He showed up at Chloe's school during pickup time. I saw him across the parking lot, chatting with a group of parents. By the time I reached them, he was already spreading his lies, telling them I was unstable and shouldn't have custody of Chloe. One mother grabbed her child and quickly walked away from me, as if I were dangerous. The principal showed up shortly after, alerted by concerned parents about Ethan's aggressive behavior. Security escorted him off the property, while he shouted about his rights. The principal assured me they'd increase security and add him to the no-access list. That evening, my phone rang. It was Child Protective Services. Someone had filed an anonymous complaint about medical neglect and emotional abuse. My heart froze. The social worker scheduled a home visit for the next morning. I knew exactly who had made that call. I tucked Chloe into bed that night, holding back tears as she asked if she had done something wrong at school. She had noticed the other kids staring and whispering. I held her tightly, promising her that everything would be fine, even though panic was rising in my chest. The CPS social worker arrived right on schedule. I had spent the night organizing every medical record, treatment note, and prescription receipt. The apartment was spotless. Thankfully, Chloe was in a good mood that morning and happily showed the social worker her artwork, telling her all about her treatments. The social worker went over everything carefully, even calling Dr. Olivia Chung from my living room. Dr. Fletcher's glowing recommendation of my dedication to Chloe's care seemed to make a difference. The social worker's expression softened. But then, she said something that made my blood run cold. Isn't it a bit too convenient that Ethan's text came in right when I was getting my head shaved? And this salon suddenly becomes ground zero for revenge makeovers, with everyone perfectly positioned to help me fight back? It was the third false report filed against me this week, each one coming from a different number but with the exact same wording. Amelia recommended I file a police report for harassment right away, as CPS would definitely notice the pattern of false reports in their system. So, after she left, I headed straight to the police station. Detective David Scott took my report seriously, especially after reviewing the CPS documentation and the wedding screenshots. He immediately noticed that Ethan's behavior matched the patterns of escalating harassment and opened an official investigation. But that wasn't the end of it. Ethan went ahead and created a fake Facebook account, posing as a concerned neighbor, and started spreading lies about my parenting in local community groups. Several clients from the salon recognized his writing style and flagged the profile, but not before a few parents at the school had seen his posts. Amelia quickly filed a cease and desist order and started working on a defamation case. She warned me that Ethan would likely escalate once he was served and suggested I mix up my routines and install security cameras. That night was especially rough. Chloe had an awful chemotherapy session and spent hours throwing up. I held her fragile body in my arms as we both cried, her from the pain and me from the overwhelming weight of it all. My phone buzzed with another threatening message from Ethan, but I couldn't even bring myself to read it. The next morning, I walked outside to find all 4 of my car tires slashed. Of course, the security footage from that time was mysteriously corrupted. I had to call an Uber to get Chloe to her treatment, burning money I didn't have. Sophia found out and, without telling me, set up a GoFundMe through the salon network. Within hours, the campaign raised enough money for new tires, security cameras, and even a month's worth of groceries. When I saw the total, I broke down in the hospital waiting room. Ethan was served with the cease and desist at his workplace. He immediately violated it, sending me 47 text messages in the span of an hour. The messages started with fake apologies but quickly escalated into threats. The last one simply read, "You'll regret this." Detective Scott went over the texts and upgraded the case to felony harassment. He advised me to immediately file for a restraining order and provided a police escort to take me home. That evening, Sophia's husband helped me install the new security cameras while Chloe happily drew pictures of her brave mommy, completely unaware of the real danger. The hearing for the restraining order came up fast. Ethan showed up with an expensive lawyer who tried to paint me as hysterical and vengeful. But then Isabella walked in. Her testimony about Ethan's long-standing pattern of abuse was utterly devastating. The judge granted a 2-year restraining order, specifically covering Chloe's school, medical facilities, and our home. As soon as the restraining order was granted, my employer received an anonymous tip about my supposed mental instability and substance use. Despite my flawless record, HR launched an investigation and placed me on unpaid leave until the matter was resolved. Amelia immediately sent a strongly worded letter to my employer about the defamation risk. The salon network mobilized like an army. Clients in HR and legal professions made strategic calls, and the investigation was dropped within days. But the damage to my reputation had already been done. Amid all the chaos, though, I found a moment of light. Chloe had found my collection of colorful headscarves and decided she wanted to look beautiful and brave like mommy. We had an impromptu fashion show in the living room, trying on different combinations and styles. For those few moments, we didn't think about restraining orders or threats, we just laughed and enjoyed each other's company. But any relief was short-lived. Despite the restraining order, Ethan continued to find ways to harass us. He sent flowers to Chloe's hospital room during one of her chemotherapy sessions, with a note that read, "Get well soon, sweetie. Uncle D." The security footage revealed that he had used a delivery service to get around the order. Detective Scott noted the violation but cautioned that it was a legal gray area, as Ethan hadn't physically broken the distance limit. To make matters worse, he started reaching out to my extended family. My sister called, completely confused and worried, after receiving messages about my supposed emotional collapse. Ethan had concocted elaborate stories, suggesting that family members needed to step in and take custody of Chloe for her own protection. I spent hours on the phone, sending medical and legal documents to prove he was lying. Most of my family took my side, but I could tell that doubt was starting to creep in with some of them. The situation grew darker when Dr. Flatshare pulled me aside at Chloe's next appointment. Someone had called the office, claiming to be my husband, and tried to get information about Chloe's treatment and medical records. The clinic staff had flagged the call immediately and refused to release any details, but the whole thing unsettled me deeply. We set up stricter security protocols, requiring photo IDs and passwords for any information requests. Just 3 days later, I came home from grocery shopping to find my apartment door slightly ajar. My heart skipped a beat as I quickly moved Chloe behind me and dialed 911. The police checked the apartment but found nothing missing. However, they noticed subtle disturbances. Chloe's stuffed animals had been rearranged on her bed. Family photos were turned around on the shelves. My pillow was out of place on the bed. It was clear that someone had been inside, touching our belongings and violating our space. The police found no signs of forced entry, but the landlord mentioned that someone had called, pretending to be my brother, asking about spare keys and maintenance schedules. Detective Scott increased patrols in our neighborhood and strongly recommended that I change the locks immediately. That night, I slept on the floor beside Chloe with a baseball bat within reach, jumping at every creak or shadow. Chloe woke up once, crying from a nightmare. I comforted her and got her back to sleep while trying to calm my own racing heart. The salon network stepped up their support in a big way. They created a schedule so that someone was always there with me, whether to accompany me to appointments or stay overnight. Sophia's teenage daughter began picking Chloe up from school and watching her until I could get home. I was overwhelmed by the kindness, but I accepted every offer with gratitude. Then, my financial situation took another blow. When I tried to pay for Chloe's anti-nausea medication at the pharmacy, my credit card was declined. A quick call to the bank revealed that someone had opened 3 credit cards in my name, maxing them out within days. The charges were traced to electronic stores and online retailers, with the IP addresses coming from coffee shops near Ethan's workplace. Amelia connected me with a financial crimes expert who started the complex process of disputing the fraudulent accounts and rebuilding my credit. The identity theft added yet another layer to the growing criminal case against Ethan. With every new piece of evidence, my life seemed to slip further out of my control. One afternoon, Isabella called, her voice choked with tears. She had discovered that Ethan had been draining her bank accounts systematically, using the shared access they still had from when he lived with her. Over $30,000 had vanished into various cash withdrawals and transfers. Without hesitation, she filed charges and provided Detective Scott with the detailed bank records that exposed the theft. Her cooperation gave a major boost to the case. A week later, Detective Scott called with good news. They had gathered enough evidence to arrest Ethan on several charges, including identity theft, harassment, and violating the restraining order. I watched from my window as police cars pulled up to his workplace. When his mugshot was released, the sight of his vacant eyes and disturbing grin made my skin crawl. The bail was set at $50,000, but to my horror, Ethan managed to post it within hours. The notification arrived while Chloe and I were at the hospital for her chemotherapy session. After her appointment, I immediately pulled her out of school and took her to stay with Sophia's family. Sophia's house became our sanctuary, and Chloe had fun playing with her kids, completely unaware of the real reason for our sudden sleepover. A few days later, the truth about how Ethan managed to make bail came to light. He had started dating an elderly woman and convinced her that I was an abusive ex, keeping his daughter from him. The woman believed his lies completely and gave him her entire life savings to fight for custody of what she thought was his biological child. My heart ached for this woman, manipulated by Ethan's elaborate web of deceit. The situation took a darker turn when Chloe's school called. A woman, claiming to be Chloe's aunt, had attempted to pick her up early. Security had detained her, and it turned out to be Ethan's new girlfriend. She broke down under questioning, convinced she was rescuing Chloe from medical abuse. Detective Scott charged her with attempted kidnapping, and she finally saw the truth about Ethan's lies. But Ethan wasn't done. He posted a video online, accusing me of conspiring with his mother to steal his inheritance. The video quickly went viral in certain circles, leading to a barrage of harassment from strangers who believed his version of events. My phone was inundated with threatening messages from people I didn't know, all convinced that I was the villain in Ethan's fabricated narrative. Amelia worked with Detective Scott to track the most serious threats while continuing to strengthen our case. We began to notice patterns in the harassment that pointed to Ethan being behind much of it. The investigation widened as more of his manipulation came to light. One of Ethan's former girlfriends reached out after seeing the viral video. She shared evidence of nearly identical harassment from years earlier, including threats that matched almost word for word what I was experiencing. She had never pressed charges before out of fear, but now she was ready to testify about his history of abusive behavior. Her evidence showed that this was far from his first campaign of terror. Ethan had moved from zero to identity theft faster than a credit card swipe at the pharmacy. Someone should have told him that harassment shouldn't come with overtime pay. The elderly woman he had deceived attempted suicide after learning the truth about his lies. Her family found her just in time, and she survived. They then joined the criminal case against Ethan, adding elder abuse charges to his already extensive criminal record. The prosecutor began assembling a case that painted a clear picture of Ethan's long history of harassment, fraud, and manipulation. Isabella hired a private investigator who uncovered even more disturbing details about Ethan's past. 2 other ex-girlfriends came forward, each with their own stories of escalating harassment after they left him. One revealed that Ethan had killed her cat when she tried to break up with him, though she had been too frightened to report it at the time. The pattern was undeniable, and it was chilling. The prosecution's case was taking shape, showing a relentless campaign of terror. Ethan's assets were frozen while the investigation continued, cutting off his resources for further harassment. But even from jail, he found ways to keep tormenting me. During a supervised call from jail, Ethan made a critical mistake that sealed his fate. He told a visitor, who was actually an undercover officer, to take care of me. New charges of solicitation to commit murder were added to his already growing list of crimes. The FBI became involved because some of Ethan's crimes crossed state lines, and Chloe and I were moved to a secure location. Chloe thought we were on a special vacation while receiving treatment at a new hospital. I tried to keep things as normal as possible for her, but the pressure was starting to take its toll on me. One night, I completely broke down in the safe house bathroom, crying quietly so Chloe wouldn't hear me. I texted Sophia, telling her I didn't know how much more I could endure. Her reply was instant. The entire salon network was praying for us and promised they wouldn't let us go through this alone. The other ex-girlfriends agreed to testify, each sharing their own experiences and revealing a decade-long history of escalating violence. Their testimonies painted Ethan as a dangerous predator who had fine-tuned his tactics over the years. The prosecutor felt confident about securing a lengthy sentence for him. Meanwhile, Ethan's mental state was deteriorating in jail. He attempted suicide but was discovered in time and placed under suicide watch. His lawyer tried to claim he was mentally unfit to stand trial, which led to a psychological evaluation. 3 different psychologists assessed him and concluded that he was competent to stand trial, though they diagnosed him with severe narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial traits. The trial would go ahead as planned. At a pre-trial hearing, Ethan lost control entirely. When he saw me in the courtroom, he lunged across the defense table, screaming that I had ruined his life. Bailiffs had to subdue him, while Chloe watched the scene unfold on closed-circuit TV from another room. The judge ordered that Ethan appear in restraints for the rest of the proceedings. His outburst only worked in our favor, strengthening our case. Throughout all of this, Chloe continued her cancer treatment. She completed her final round of chemotherapy on an emotionally charged day. I held her close as she rang the bell at the hospital, tears of relief streaming down our faces. The other patients and families cheered, oblivious to the other battle we were fighting. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, our nightmare was finally coming to an end. But Ethan was far from finished. A key witness started receiving death threats and initially refused to testify. Detective Scott had to step in with protection, and the intimidation tactics were taking a toll on everyone involved. Amelia brought in a victim's rights advocate to help me prepare for my trial testimony. We spent hours rehearsing, going over every detail, preparing for the defense's attempts to tear me down. But then, Ethan's new girlfriend, not the elderly woman, but another woman he manipulated while in jail through letters, somehow got hold of our safe house address and posted it online. We had to relocate immediately, which disrupted Chloe's recovery routine. The FBI traced the leak to a court clerk Ethan had been manipulating with love letters. She was arrested, but by then, the damage had been done. Isabella's health couldn't withstand the stress of what Ethan had put us through. She suffered a massive heart attack and was rushed to the hospital. From her hospital bed, she recorded a video testimony about Ethan's lifelong pattern of abuse and manipulation. She wanted to ensure her voice was heard, even if she couldn't be there in person. 2 weeks later, Isabella passed away from complications. Her final act was to ensure that Ethan would face justice for everything he had done to Chloe and me. I had to sit down and explain to Chloe that the bad man who had caused us so much fear wouldn't be able to hurt us anymore. She asked me if I promised, and I said yes, praying that I was telling her the truth. With the trial date fast approaching, I braced myself for what was coming. 8 months had passed since that day at the salon when I had shaved my head. 8 months of torment, but also 8 months of discovering just how strong Chloe and I had become together. The trial kicked off with opening statements that portrayed Ethan either as a ruthless predator or a man pushed too far by a spiteful ex. I watched him smirk at the lies his lawyer spun, wearing the same twisted grin from his mugshot, but this time, I was prepared. The salon family packed the gallery, their presence a silent show of solidarity that bolstered my strength. Chloe's therapist was set to testify about the trauma inflicted on a child already battling cancer. The other victims would give their testimonies via video link, ensuring their safety. The evidence was indisputable. As I prepared to take the stand, I reflected on how drastically my life had changed. What had started as a simple act of love for my daughter had dragged me into a nightmare I never thought was possible. But it had also revealed the extraordinary power of women lifting each other up, of communities coming together in support, and of justice eventually prevailing. Tomorrow, I would testify. Tonight, I held my brave, beautiful daughter and promised her that soon, we'd finally be free. The next morning, I took the stand. For 6 relentless hours, I recounted each threat, violation, and moment of terror that Ethan had inflicted on us. His lawyer attempted to paint me as vengeful and unstable, but I remained composed, presenting the evidence step by step. The prosecutor guided me through the events, from the harassment at the wedding to the identity theft and the attempted kidnapping at Chloe's school. Ethan sat there in his orange jumpsuit, shackled and furious, his face contorting with anger as I spoke. When I detailed Chloe's nightmares and her regression, he actually laughed. The jury saw it. Several jurors visibly flinched at his response. Chloe's therapist testified next, connecting via closed-circuit TV to protect Chloe from having to see Ethan. She explained the profound psychological effects on a child already facing cancer. The therapist outlined how Chloe developed severe separation anxiety, refused to sleep alone, and began wetting the bed again after years of being potty trained. The courtroom was silent as she spoke about the lasting impact of trauma on a sick child. The previous victims shared their testimonies through video link for their safety. Hannah, the first ex-girlfriend, showed heartbreaking photos of her dead cat, explaining how she found it in her apartment after rejecting Ethan's attempts to reconcile. She had kept the threatening letters he sent, which matched the ones he had sent to me. The second victim spoke about how Ethan sabotaged her career by getting her fired from 3 jobs with false complaints. Detective Scott meticulously presented the evidence. Phone records showed hundreds of calls and texts from Ethan, despite the restraining order. Bank statements documented the theft of Isabella's money, and security footage showed him stalking us. The fake social media profiles used to spread lies about me were traced back to Ethan's devices. The evidence was clear. The elderly woman Ethan had scammed testified from her hospital bed, still recovering from her suicide attempt. She explained how he convinced her that Chloe was his biological daughter, being denied cancer treatment by an abusive mother. She had given him $40,000 from her savings, thinking she was helping Chloe. Her testimony was heart-wrenching. On day 3 of the trial, Ethan took the stand, defying his lawyer's advice. His narcissism wouldn't allow him to remain silent. He claimed everything was a conspiracy between me and his mother to steal his inheritance. He insisted the other victims were lying for attention. He even suggested that Chloe wasn't really sick and that I was poisoning her for sympathy. The prosecutor's cross-examination was merciless. She played recordings of Ethan's jail calls, where he plotted to destroy me and laughed about Chloe's distress during the swatting incident. She presented his social media posts, where he called me mentally unstable while also claiming to love me. She laid out the timeline showing how his harassment grew each time I tried to protect myself. Ethan lost control completely on the stand. He shouted that I had ruined his life, that I deserved everything that had happened, and that Chloe would be better off without me. The judge called for a recess as bailiffs quickly restrained him. His outburst destroyed any chance of jury sympathy. The defense's closing argument attempted to portray Ethan as mentally unstable and desperate, driven to extreme actions by a manipulative ex. They argued that his behavior was more a cry for help than criminal conduct. The prosecutor's response was devastating. She presented a detailed timeline of his calculated, deliberate actions over months. She pointed out how he had manipulated several people, stolen money, and even tried to have me murdered. This wasn't a case of mental illness. This was pure evil. The jury deliberated for 14 hours. Chloe and I waited in the safe house, doing our best to maintain a sense of normalcy. We played board games and watched movies, but I kept checking my phone for any updates. Sophia sent encouraging texts every hour. The salon network held a prayer circle for us. When the verdict was announced, I was in the kitchen, preparing Chloe's favorite soup. Amelia called with the news. Guilty on all counts. Stalking, harassment, identity theft, witness intimidation, attempted murder solicitation, elder abuse, and fraud. The video testimony from his mother, recorded from her hospital bed, made me wonder what she had known about Ethan all along but had never spoken of until now. His manipulation of that court clerk while in jail showed that even behind bars, he was still controlling people. I dropped the spoon and collapsed on the floor, sobbing with relief. 6 weeks later, we returned for sentencing. Isabella's recorded testimony played in court, where her last words condemned her son's actions and expressed her apologies to his victims. The other victims gave their impact statements. I stood before the judge and described how Ethan had exploited my daughter's cancer, turning the worst period of our lives into an unimaginable nightmare. The judge sentenced Ethan to 25 years to life, with no chance of parole for 15 years. He would serve his sentence in maximum security, 3 states away. Permanent restraining orders were issued, protecting Chloe and me for the rest of our lives. As they led him away, Ethan screamed threats, his voice fading as they took him down the hallway. The civil suit was settled swiftly after the criminal conviction. Ethan's frozen assets and Isabella's estate provided $500,000 in damages. This would cover Chloe's medical expenses, our therapy, and ensure our future security. While the money couldn't undo the trauma, it lifted a significant financial burden. A month after the trial, Chloe and I moved into a new apartment in a secure building with advanced safety measures. The salon network helped us decorate, transforming the space into a home. Chloe chose purple walls for her room and insisted on displaying the drawings she had made during our time in hiding. Chloe returned to school with a comprehensive support plan in place. The principal personally ensured her safety, and a counselor checked in on her every day. At first, she was anxious, clinging to my hand at drop-off, but she gradually regained her confidence. Her teacher reported that she was making friends again. I returned to work full-time, and my employer, now fully supportive after understanding the truth, allowed me to adjust my schedule to accommodate Chloe's medical appointments. Colleagues who had doubted me during the investigation apologized. My supervisor approved a flexible schedule to help with Chloe's ongoing treatments. Detective Scott visited one last time to confirm that Ethan was securely locked up in maximum security. He reassured me that any attempt by Ethan or his associates to contact us would result in additional charges. The FBI continued to monitor potential threats from anyone linked to Ethan. Chloe's follow-up scans showed that she remained cancer-free. Dr. Flatshare remarked on how much calmer we both seemed. Chloe had stopped asking about the bad man and was focused on regular 8-year-old concerns, like her upcoming birthday party. Sophia threw a celebration at the salon, marking both our victory and Chloe's recovery. The women who had supported us from the start gathered together to celebrate the end of our ordeal. Chloe wore one of her colorful headscarves and proudly announced that she wanted to be a hairstylist like Sophia when she grew up. Amelia helped me establish a victims advocacy fund using part of the settlement money. The fund would offer legal assistance to other women going through similar struggles. The first recipient was a young mother whose ex was showing signs of Ethan's manipulative behavior. 6 months after the trial, I watched Chloe play in the park with her new friends. She ran, laughed, and enjoyed herself, her hair growing back in soft curls. I sat on a bench, no longer constantly scanning for threats or checking over my shoulder. We weren't unscarred, but we were healing. That night, I tucked Chloe into her purple room. She hugged me tightly and whispered that she loved her brave mommy. As she drifted off to sleep, I stood in the doorway, feeling the weight of the past year finally lift. We had survived. We had won. We were free. It's time to close the chapter on this journey. Thanks for letting me share this with you. Hopefully, it gave a little extra spark. Like the video, it helps more than you realize.